Before Adam was created, the world was not a blank page. Behind the very first words of the Bible lies a strange gap, a heavy darkness that few ever notice. The real question is not did a world before Adam exist, but rather who ruled it. If every kingdom has a king, then that ancient kingdom, drowned in chaos and judgment, must also have had rulers sitting on its throne. And the Bible gives us two names. Two powerful, primeval beings, neither human nor angel. They are Behemoth and Leviathan. For centuries, interpreters have tried to turn these beings into symbols. Behemoth has been compared to a hippopotamus, Leviathan to a crocodile. But when we read the book of Job carefully, when we look at the original words, we see descriptions far beyond any natural animal. Behemoth has bones like bronze, tendons like iron, and a tail that swings like a mighty cedar tree. Leviathan breathes out fire. Smoke pours from his nostrils, and it makes the sea boil like a great cauldron. These cannot be ordinary beasts. These are profiles of ancient rulers, kings who once held dominion over land and sea, before Adam was crowned a new king. The book of Enoch, an ancient Jewish text, goes even further. It describes Behemoth and Leviathan as a primordial pair, placed in the wilderness and in the deep sea from the very beginning. They were not destroyed, but confined, waiting for the final moment of history. This means that what we read in Genesis 1 is not only a story of creation, but a story of reclaiming a fallen kingdom. A kingdom once ruled by giants, now judged and left in darkness. If this is true, then our whole perspective on Genesis changes. The words, "In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth," are not just the start of everything, but a declaration of victory, a new beginning written over the ruins of an older world. And the world of Adam was not the first creation, but a restored kingdom, a throne given back after the monstrous rulers had been overthrown, the Pre-Adamic kingdom. When we read Genesis 1, most people focus on the opening line. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. But right after that, we find a strange picture, and the earth became formless and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. This is one of the most debated verses in the whole Bible, because if God created a perfect world, why does it immediately appear ruined, dark, and chaotic? The Hebrew phrase describing the scene is Tohu va-bohu, formless and empty. But this phrase does not simply mean unfinished. In the Bible, it often signals judgment. In Jeremiah 4 verse 23, when the prophet describes the destruction of Judah, he writes, "I looked at the earth, and behold, it was formless and void. I looked at the heavens, and their light was gone." The same phrase, the same image, not creation, but aftermath. This means Genesis 1 verse 2 is not showing us untouched raw material. It is showing the remains of fallen kingdom. A land once ordered, now reduced to rubble. A throne once occupied, now overturned. The darkness covering it was not just nightfall. It was a shadow of judgment. Picture a mighty empire after a crushing defeat. Palaces that once shone now lie in ruins. Rivers change their course. Cities stand abandoned. Smoke covers the skies. That is the image of Tohu va-bohu, like walking through a battlefield after the war has ended. No trumpet sounds, no armies march, only a heavy silence, the silence of a kingdom lost. So the next question is, whose kingdom was it? Who sat on the throne of the world before Adam? The book of Job, one of the oldest writings in the Bible, gives us part of the answer. There, God describes two beings unlike any animal we know, Behemoth and Leviathan. They are not just symbols of strength, as many say. In the context of Genesis 1, the logic is clear. If there was a fallen kingdom, then there must have been dethroned rulers. Behemoth and Leviathan are the secret files on those rulers. This changes the way we see creation. The 6 days were not just about making something out of nothing. They were a campaign of reclamation. God did not start with a blank canvas. He started with a world once ruled by chaotic powers. When he said, "Let there be light," it was not only the first sunrise, it was light shining into a battlefield claimed by darkness. When he separated land from sea, it was not only geology, it was drawing boundaries, setting order, declaring the land and the sea no longer belong to Leviathan and Behemoth. Many scholars call this the gap theory, the idea that between verse 1 and verse 2 of Genesis, a great catastrophe took place. That event turned a perfect world into chaos. And when we read through Job and Enoch, we see that this catastrophe was judgment on a primeval kingdom where Behemoth and Leviathan once ruled. This is not a strange idea to the ancient world. Almost every great culture has myths of a cosmic battle between a creator god and a monster of chaos. In Babylon, the god Marduk slays the sea dragon Tiamat to form the world. In Canaan, Baal fights the sea serpent Latan. In Egypt, the sun god Ra struggles each night against the giant serpent Apep. These stories may be distorted, but they echo the same memory. A chaotic power once ruled, but was defeated by the Most High, and only then could the world be established. Genesis does not record the details of that battle, but it leaves clues in other passages. You divided the sea by your strength. You broke the heads of the sea monsters in the waters. You crushed the heads of Leviathan and gave him as food to the creatures of the desert. Psalm 74 verses 13 to 14. Creation here is not gentle. It is conquest. A real enemy was defeated so that order could begin. Seen this way, Genesis 1 is not just a beginning. It is a new beginning. A kingdom rising from the ruins of the old. Adam was created not simply to enjoy a garden, but to reign. To become the new king, placed on a throne once held by the beast that had been cast down. The secret dossier of Behemoth, king of the land. In the book of Job, chapter 40, God speaks to Job out of the whirlwind and introduces a very unusual figure. Look at Behemoth, which I made along with you. From the very first line, something strange appears. Behemoth is not a god, not a being equal to the Creator. It was created, yet it goes far beyond any creature known to man. The details in Scripture make the picture unique. Its strength is in its hips, its power in the muscles of its belly. Its tail sways like a cedar. Its bones are like tubes of bronze, its limbs like bars of iron. If Behemoth were only a hippopotamus, as some scholars have suggested, this description would not fit. The tail of a hippo is short and small, nothing like a giant cedar tree, the symbol of power and majesty in Lebanon, and bones and sinews compared to metal. This is no longer the language of biology, but the language of a supernatural being. Another important verse is Job 40 verse 19. It ranks first among the works of God. The Hebrew phrase Reshith Derek El means a masterpiece of God, the chief of his works. This lifts Behemoth into another category. It is not just a massive animal. It is the crown creation of an earlier age, a period hinted at in Scripture, but never fully described. And the passage closes with a chilling statement. Only its maker can approach it with his sword. No human, no weapon can subdue it. Only the Creator himself has the authority and power to judge it. This shows us that Behemoth is not simply a mythical monster, but a king, an appointed ruler meant to govern a land before Adam. If we look at Behemoth in Jewish tradition and in the surrounding cultures, we find traces everywhere. In the book of Enoch, Behemoth is described as dwelling in a vast desert called Duodain. In many Near Eastern myths, the image of land beasts, giant creatures ruling over plains and mountains, are distorted memories of Behemoth. It represents raw power, uncontrolled rule, and the pride of a created being that sought to rise to the level of the Creator. What is frightening is that Behemoth does not belong only to the past. Its shadow is still present in today's world. Wherever systems of power are built on violence, wherever societies exalt brute strength as law, the spirit of Behemoth is alive. This is a beast from the earth, mentioned in Revelation, a symbol that echoes the authority of Behemoth in the last days. When God showed Job the vision of Behemoth, the goal was not to tell an interesting story, but to teach a lesson. Behemoth is proof that there are powers on earth far beyond human control. Yet God holds complete sovereignty. He defeated Behemoth in the first age, and he can defeat every behemoth that rises in the world and in our hearts today. The dossier of Behemoth reminds us that this earth once had a king before Adam, a dethroned king, and its continued existence is a warning. Every power built on pride and violence will one day fall under the judgment of God. The secret dossier of Leviathan, king of the sea. After introducing Behemoth as king of the land, the book of Job turns to an even more terrifying figure. Leviathan, the entire chapter 41, is devoted to this creature. God asks Job, "Can you pull in Leviathan with a fishhook?" The question is rhetorical. The point is clear. No human can touch it. Leviathan is not described as an ordinary animal. It breathes fire. Its breath sets coals ablaze, and flames dart from its mouth. Smoke pours from its nostrils like a boiling pot. When it moves, the sea churns like a cauldron. Ancient people were used to thinking of sea dragons as fantasy. But in the Bible, Leviathan is described with such vivid details that it is hard to believe it is only a metaphor. The most striking feature in Leviathan's dossier is its invincibility. Swords and spears cannot harm it. It treats iron like straw and bronze like rotten wood. Even its very presence changes the environment. It makes the sea boil, leaving a sparkling wake behind it, like white hair on the surface of the deep. And Job 41 ends with this declaration: "It is king over all the children of pride." This is not just a monster. It is a sovereign, ruling not only the oceans, but also embodying the proud spirit that rises against God. In Psalm 74, Leviathan is tied directly to the act of creation. You divided the sea by your strength. You broke the heads of sea monsters in the waters. You crushed the heads of Leviathan. This shows that the new world could not begin until Leviathan was dethroned. In Isaiah 27, verse 1, prophecy declares that on the final day, the Lord will punish Leviathan, the twisting serpent, the great dragon of the sea. Leviathan, then, is not just a figure of the past. It plays a role in the ultimate future of humanity. When we look at other cultures, we find traces of Leviathan everywhere. In Babylon, the sea dragon Tiamat was slain by Marduk, and from her body the world was formed. In Canaan, the storm god Baal fought Latin, the sea serpent whose name closely resembles Leviathan. In Egypt, the sun god Ra struggled each night against the giant serpent Apep, who tried to devour the sun. In the East, sea dragons were often seen as lords of the waters, with power beyond human control. These stories are not coincidence. They are distorted memories of a real being that once existed, Leviathan. In Enoch chapter 60, Leviathan is described as female, dwelling in the deep sea, paired with Behemoth, the male who rules the wilderness. This shows us once again that they are not mere symbols, but a royal pair, king and queen of the primeval age, one on land, one in the sea, both ruling before our world began. But the most important part is not their form or strength, but their spiritual meaning. Leviathan represents pride, rebellion, and the chaos that resists order. That is why the book of Job calls it king over all the children of pride. And when Revelation describes a beast in the sea, with 7 heads and 10 horns, we hear the echo of Leviathan again. Leviathan is not just a monster in an old story. It is a living symbol of chaos that continually seeks to challenge God. It once ruled the primeval ocean. It will appear again in the end. And even today, its spirit is present in every system built on pride and power. Evidence from the book of Enoch. The book of Job gave us the first look at Behemoth and Leviathan. But another ancient text, rarely mentioned in churches today, provides even more details. This is the book of Enoch, a Jewish work preserved by the Qumran community, and even quoted by the apostles in the New Testament. In chapter 60 of Enoch, we meet these 2 mysterious creatures again. The account is very clear. On that day, 2 monsters will be separated. One female, named Leviathan, will dwell in the depths of the great sea. One male, named Behemoth, will occupy a vast desert called Duodain. Here, Enoch is no longer using symbolic language. He identifies them as real beings, a pair in opposition. Land and sea, male and female, parallel powers but kept apart. What is striking is that Enoch says they were divided on the very first day of creation. This matches a picture in Genesis 1, where God separated land from sea, light from darkness. But in Enoch's account, the separation is not just physical. It is God binding these rulers of chaos, confining them to their own domains, stripping them of their former throne. It is an image of dethronement, of power being taken away from ancient kings. Even more important, Enoch reveals the ultimate purpose of Behemoth and Leviathan. The angel tells Enoch that they were prepared for the great day of the Lord, to be given as food. Strange words, but the meaning is deep. It shows that these creatures were not destroyed right away, but kept in place for a specific time in God's plan of salvation. At the end of the age, they will be judged, and their very existence will become a witness to God's final victory over chaos. This turns Leviathan and Behemoth into living relics of a lost age. They are survivors from a pre-Adamic kingdom. They remind us that this world has already experienced a great rebellion and that God won. And they remind us that in the future, when the final battle comes, God will once again show his absolute victory. Some scholars say that Enoch reflects an old Jewish belief in the two final beasts. This idea is not found only in Enoch. It echoes in Revelation 13, where two beasts, one from the sea, one from the earth, appear in the last days. This shows a continuation of a pattern. Two ancient powers, once restrained, reappearing on the stage of history to complete their roles. What makes Enoch remarkable is how consistent it is with the rest of the Bible. Job describes them with vivid details. The Psalms and Isaiah mention the battles where God crushed them, and Enoch connects all the pieces, showing that they are not empty symbols, but real beings prepared for a great conclusion. This also explains why we see images of Leviathan and Behemoth spread throughout world mythology. When humanity scattered after the Tower of Babel, the memory of these ancient rulers went with them, reshaped into local myths. But in Jewish tradition, the memory was not lost. It was preserved in Job, in the Psalms, and in Enoch, as a secret dossier God wanted his people to remember. From Enoch, we learn that Behemoth and Leviathan did not appear by accident. They were created, allowed to rule for a time, dethroned, and then kept as evidence. They are warnings that all rebellious powers will be brought down. They are also promises that final judgment will surely come. Why did God let them exist? If Behemoth and Leviathan were dethroned rulers, if the Almighty could defeat them, why did he not destroy them completely? Why let them continue to exist in darkness, confined until the last day? The answer lies in how God reveals his power and wisdom. In Job, when God wanted to show Job the limits of human strength, he did not point to stars or mountains. He pointed to Behemoth and Leviathan. The message is clear. You cannot understand or control these beings, but I can. That makes them living proof of God's absolute sovereignty. No matter how strong humanity becomes, we cannot stand against Behemoth and Leviathan, but the Creator already defeated and restrained them. Another reason is that they serve as monuments of judgment. In the ancient world, when a kingdom fell, statues of the defeated king were often toppled or left broken as a warning. Behemoth and Leviathan are like living monuments from a cosmic battle. They remind every generation that a kingdom of chaos once rose against God and was crushed. Each time they appear in Scripture, it is a warning. Anyone who follows the same path of pride will meet the same end. They also serve a purpose in the final plan of salvation. Enoch shows that they are kept for the great day of the Lord. In that vision, Behemoth and Leviathan are not only past failures, they are props of the final drama. When they appear again in the last days, God's judgment will be displayed publicly so that no one can deny his absolute power. Their survival shows us that God wastes nothing. He even uses defeated rebels to teach humanity. From them we learn the limits of man, the danger of pride, and the certainty of judgment. They also remind us that darkness is real, chaos is real, but both are under God's control. More personally, Behemoth and Leviathan mirror the struggles in our own lives. Behemoth represents brute force in the world, systems of power, ambition, and violence. Leviathan represents inner chaos, pride, temptation, and the darkness of the heart. God allows them to remain as reminders that these forces still lurk, but he has set limits over them. That teaches us to trust him, not ourselves. Finally, their existence is also a promise. If God defeated them once, he will defeat every power like them again, today and in the future. When we look at a world full of violence, greed, and chaos, we can remember these are not new. They are echoes of the old kingdom of Behemoth and Leviathan. And just as in the past, their end is already determined. Judgment and destruction on the day of the Lord. Adam, the new king. When the kingdom of Behemoth and Leviathan was overthrown, land and sea were left in ruins. But the story did not end there. God did not allow the earth to remain in chaos. He began a new plan, and at the center of that plan was the first human, Adam. In Genesis 1 verses 26 to 28, God said, Let us make man in our image and our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, the livestock, the whole earth, and every creature that moves along the ground. This was not just a blessing. It was a coronation. Adam was placed on the throne of the new world, given authority to rule in place of those who had once reigned. Adam's mission was not just to take care of a garden. It was a royal assignment. When God placed him in the Garden of Eden, it was not simply for comfort. Eden was the capital, the center of rule, where God's new kingdom on earth would begin. From there, Adam and his descendants were called to fill the earth and subdue it. This was a command to expand the kingdom, to drive back every trace of the darkness that Behemoth and Leviathan once ruled. When we look closely, we see Adam's task was very strategic. Rule over the fish of the sea, a direct reminder of Leviathan, who once dominated the oceans. Rule over the beasts of the land, a reminder of Behemoth, the king of creatures on earth. Adam's mission was to affirm that the earth now belonged to humanity, made in God's image, no longer to those primeval beasts. This perspective changes how we see the 6 days of creation. Let there be light was not only the first sunrise, but the defeat of the darkness that had covered the earth. Let the waters be separated from the land was not only a physical act, but the setting of boundaries, limiting the power of Leviathan and Behemoth. Each act of creation was a step of reclaiming and restoring order. And when mankind appeared, the plan reached its climax. A new king was placed on the throne. But the story did not stop there. Adam was crowned, yet he quickly lost his crown. In Genesis 3, when he listened to the serpent and sinned, he did not just break a command. He handed his authority back to the forces of darkness. If Adam's original mission was to guard the kingdom and expand it, his fall caused him to fail. Instead of reigning, he was expelled. Instead of expanding, he lost control. This shows the seriousness of Adam's role. He was not just a gardener. He was a king chosen by God to replace the former rulers. And when he failed, the entire kingdom was placed at risk again. The fall was not only a moral failure, but also a political disaster, a dynasty collapsing at its birth. Yet Adam being chosen as the new king still gives us hope. It shows God's clear intention. This earth will never again belong to Behemoth and Leviathan. Even though humanity failed, God's plan continues. That is why throughout the Bible we see the promise of another king, the one who would finish what Adam could not. That king is Christ, the King of Kings, who will bring final victory. The story of Adam shows us the bigger picture. After Behemoth and Leviathan were dethroned, God installed a new king, humanity, made in his image. This was not only creation, but also the giving of authority. And that moment laid the foundation for the entire story of redemption. From Adam to the fall to Christ, the true king of all ages, echoes in culture and revelation. Even though Behemoth and Leviathan were dethroned at the very beginning, the memory of them never disappeared. Stories of sea dragons, giant beasts, and cosmic battles between Creator God and a monster chaos appear in nearly every culture in the world. This shows that humanity carries a collective memory of a cosmic war, of ancient rulers being cast down. In Babylon, people told how the god Marduk fought the sea dragon Tiamat and split her body in two to form heaven and earth. In Canaan, the god Baal battled and defeated Latin, a sea serpent whose name closely resembles the Hebrew Leviathan. The Egyptians believed the sun god Ra had to fight the great serpent Apep every night, who tried to swallow the light. In Greece, the stories of Typhon, the giant monster who challenged even the gods of Olympus, reflect the same memory. Even in the East, the dragon appears as a mighty force ruling the waters and the skies. These stories are not mere imagination. They are fragments of a real memory. When humanity scattered after the Tower of Babel, the memory of Leviathan and Behemoth went with them. It became distorted into myth, but the core remained, a battle between order and chaos, between the Creator and the primeval beasts. What is remarkable is that the Bible does not only preserve this memory of the past, it also brings it back in prophecy. Daniel and Revelation describe beasts rising from the sea and the land in the last days. In Revelation 13, the beast from the sea has 7 heads and 10 horns, given power and authority, an image echoing Leviathan. The beast in the land performs miracles and deceives humanity, carrying the shadow of Behemoth. These are not new figures. They are the return of old archetypes, echoes from the primeval age, stepping back onto the stage of history in the end times. Revelation shows us that humanity's final conflict is not only between nations or political systems. It is a continuation of a war that began before Adam, a war between God and the rulers of chaos. Leviathan and Behemoth, though dethroned, still play their part in the final act. When the beasts from the sea and the beasts from the land appear, they are the re-emergence of the two primeval kings, now serving the dragon, Satan, in his last battle against God. This helps us see the whole story of salvation as one great arc. It begins with God overthrowing the primeval rulers and installing Adam as a new king. It moves through the fall, through systems of power shaped by the spirit of Behemoth and Leviathan, and it ends in the final battle, where those ancient figures reappear, only to be destroyed completely by Christ. This truth explains why dragons and monsters appear in every culture. They're not just fantasy. They are humanity's memory of a real spiritual reality, and a reminder that the battle is not yet finished. Revelation shows that it will erupt once more, and this time, the victory will be final and eternal. The myths of monsters are not just for stories or to frighten children. They are fragments of a cosmic memory. They remind us that the world is not only physical, but also tied to a long spiritual war. And Revelation assures us that the same God who defeated Leviathan and Behemoth in the past will once again destroy every force of chaos in future. The story of Behemoth and Leviathan is not only for looking back at the past or predicting the future. It is also a mirror for our present lives. Because the spirit of these two beasts still exists in the world today, even in the heart of every person. Behemoth represents brute strength, power built on violence and ambition. It is the image of unjust systems, of rulers who crush the weak. But if we look closer, Behemoth can also show up in our personal lives, in stubbornness, in pride, in the desire to control others. Whenever we let power, status, or success define our worth, we allow Behemoth to rise inside us. Leviathan is different. It represents chaos and arrogance. It is like waves that sweep away our peace, filling our hearts with worry, desire, and lies. Spiritually, Leviathan appears when we let pride and selfishness guide us. When we believe we do not need God, when we chase our own illusions and ignore the truth, that is when Leviathan whispers in our mind. So the question is not only, how did Behemoth and Leviathan rule the world before Adam, but also, how are Behemoth and Leviathan ruling my life right now? Every person must face these two beasts in different ways. Some wrestle with the power of Behemoth, ambition and control. Others struggle with Leviathan, pride and inner chaos. The good news is that we are not alone. God defeated them in the past. He put them under his control. And through Christ, he gives us power to overcome them in our daily lives. If Adam was called to reign in their place, then every believer today is also called to live as a citizen of a new kingdom, not letting Behemoth or Leviathan shape our lives, but letting Christ be the true king. The story of Behemoth and Leviathan takes us on a great journey, from the age before Adam all the way to the end of time. They are not only mysterious creatures in the Bible, nor just vague symbols. They are evidence that this world was once ruled by chaotic powers, and a reminder that every proud authority will ultimately be crushed by God. But more than history, they are a mirror for us today. Each of us is at risk of letting Behemoth, the beast of ambition and power, or Leviathan, the beast of pride and chaos, sit on the throne of our hearts. The message of the Bible is clear. You cannot defeat them on your own. Only the Creator can. And through Christ, that victory has already been given to you. When we look at Genesis 1, we no longer see just a simple beginning. We see a conquest, a coronation, light driving out darkness, sea and land separated, boundaries set in place. And finally, humanity crowned to rule in place of the dethroned beasts. Adam failed, but Christ came to finish the mission. He is the true king, the one who conquered the dragon and the beast, and who will completely triumph in the end. And now the question is for you. Which kingdom do you belong to? Will you let Behemoth and Leviathan, the beasts of ambition and pride, rule your life? Or will you give the throne to Christ? This is not a distant question. It is a decision made every day, with every choice you take. If what you've heard today made you see the Bible with new eyes, share your thoughts below. Tell us, what is a Leviathan in your life? What behemoth is trying to take control of your heart? I believe that as we share, we will learn together how to live as citizens of the new kingdom. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video so that more people can discover the hidden truths in the Bible. This is Hidden Light Bible, where together we uncover forgotten pages of Scripture so that true light can shine on the old darkness.